Good evening, everyone. I'm Brian Leventhal. I'm the city manager here in Campbell, and I welcome you all to this evening's budget workshop for the Campbell community. We appreciate you participating in this first ever sort of community workshop on budget. What we're trying to achieve tonight is really hearing from the public directly and providing the public an opportunity to ask questions, have input, and really participate in the budget setting process. And tonight, we're going to go through a presentation briefly by the staff members that are keenly responsible for the budget in their work areas. And we're going to try to minimize that because we really do want to get to your questions. But we believe that there's some valuable information. And so the presentation tonight is going to be focused on what we think you may be interested in. And as people registered to participate in this meeting, we received input on topics that people were interested in. Hopefully the presentation this evening will touch on those topics that you are interested in. But if we failed to address something, after we go through the staff presentation, we will be engaging with the public. And we have several members registered for the meeting today. And so for starters, when we go to the public, we will probably limit the time to 3 minutes per person to start with. We do want to give ample time to everyone to at least get through the initial round of questions. And then based where we are with the volume of questions and the time of the meeting, we would be glad to entertain additional questions or provide more time. We're really here this evening to hear from you. This is not a noticed public council meeting. And so this evening in this workshop, the intent is to provide the public information and hear from you and your questions and issues. And we're recording this meeting this evening and taking careful notes with all the staff members here so that when we brief the council at the next step in the budget process, we can be sure to communicate the issues and provide the council the information that we obtained at this meeting this evening. So with that, with your indulgence, we're going to start a brief presentation and we're going to go through the budget just briefly. I'm going to do an initial PowerPoint presentation here just quickly to give some broad overview to our budget process, where we are in that process, and how the budget was developed in some broad picture figures and some charts to help explain to the public where we are in the budget process. And then we're going to briefly explain what we call the CIP. The CIP is Capital Improvement Program. And those are all the things that we do, one-time expenses, road projects, the Measure O police building is a CIP project. So we're going to go through the operating budget really quickly. Every staff member is going to briefly present their departments and what they believe the public may be interested in the budget. And then we're going to briefly discuss the CIP, hopefully enough to give you, members of the public, information that will help inform your comments and may answer some of your questions. So when we get to that point, we'd be glad to take comments. We do have the city clerk on the call this evening, and she will be announcing the speakers as we've received them. And as your name is announced, we will move you in to the panelist and unmute you. If you unmute yourself on your side and introduce yourself, we'll entertain comments for 3 minutes for the initial round and then be glad to provide more time, as I said. So with that, thank you, Will, for putting this up on the screen. Tonight, the objectives here are highlighted. I just went through those. And the format that we discussed is first and foremost staff presentation, and then more importantly, the open public forum to hear back from you. So tonight in the process, this is May 20th. This is a step in an iterative process that we've been working on with the council for many months. The budget process really spans the whole year, but in the city of Campbell, our budget process works off our fiscal year, which is July 1 through June 30th. So in a very typical process during the late winter and springtime, we meet with the council on numerous occasions to develop priorities and work plans. And we talk about capital improvements. We talk about operating expenses and revenues, and we develop a draft budget. We've recently published that draft budget both for the public and the council. We met with the council this past Tuesday, to present the draft budget. And for purposes of discussion this evening, if you want to obtain the documents that we're looking at and using for this evening's discussion, they're available on the Campbell website. And you see that URL on the screen here. It's www.ci.campbell.ca.us/151/budget. And that will lead you to our digital budget book and a PDF version. The digital budget book is a new format that we're trying this year that will allow you to navigate and customize your view. You see on the screen here on the bottom, this is a screenshot of what the budget book menu system looks like. Has introduction and summaries. You can click on a particular department or a particular funding source to see exactly what you're looking for and customize and print just those features you want to look at. Also on that page is a full PDF version of the entire budget book. It's quite a lengthy document, but if you're used to working in paper, the PDF version is there for your use as well. All right, let's get into a little bit of overview. Here's a financial overview. We're just showing you what we call our general fund. We're not showing you all the funds, but the general fund is the big one. This is the fund that's most often referred to for most of our operating expenditures. And for purposes of simplicity, we're just presenting the general fund this evening. But certainly if there's questions or issues that may be related to another fund, we may touch on those as well. So this gives you a broad overview of where we are as compared to the last fiscal year and the previous 2 fiscal years. The column to the right that says percent change represents the percent change for the proposed fiscal year 22 as compared to the fiscal year 21 adopted budget, which would be the column just to the left of those figures. So this year, this budget that's being presented to the council does show a modest surplus of $486,000. That surplus will go in as proposed by staff to replenish some emergency reserves that were used this last fiscal year during the COVID pandemic. The city did experience great loss of some of our revenue sources, in particular sales tax and transient occupancy tax. The other thing I wanted to point out with this slide is in fiscal year 21 estimate and in the fiscal 2022 proposed, those figures for revenues do also contain $3.9 million in federal relief funds that are programmed into the budget. And we'll explain that a little bit more as we go further on these slides. This slide's just a representation in a pie chart format. It's really easy to see the bigger pieces of the pie. Obviously provide either a greater revenue on the left pie chart or a greater expenditure on the right chart. And you can see our largest revenue source in green on the left is property taxes. And of course, our largest expenditure on the right in green is expenditure of salaries. Next slide, please. So every year when we do a budget proposal, we talk with the council about long-range forecasting. We look back a few years and we look forward 5 years. And that's why we show you this chart. It shows right where we are in the middle as you look from left to right, and you can see what's labeled estimated surpluses in fiscal year 2021 and fiscal year 2022. Those surpluses, as I mentioned in the previous slide, are really there because we're getting the ARP federal rescue funds infusion into our budget these 2 fiscal years. If you look at fiscal year 20 on the bottom axis there, you can see the green line drops dramatically. That is really the beginning of the fiscal impacts of COVID. And that lower level revenue, that green line would have stayed at that lower level if it weren't for federal aid. But you see as that green line this year and in the proposed year is at a slight surplus. In fiscal year 23, we're just at a very minor deficit of a couple $100,000. This budget shows $500,000. We anticipate that being reduced, hopefully to zero, over the next fiscal year as we work through the fiscal year 22 budget year. Our anticipation would be that by the year fiscal year 23, that deficit would be reduced to zero. In fiscal year 24, in the outer years, you see the green line will exceed the expenditures, and that's a good sign. What we're really working on this budget year and next year is to manage that balance between the green line and the red line. As you see, it's delicately balanced there from fiscal year 21 through fiscal year 23. Next slide, please. This slide shows our general fund reserves. This is our savings account in better, more common terms. And where it shows where we expect the revenues to be and where we would like to be. The blue line is where we would like to be. That's our target range. And you can see it on the bottom axis there where fiscal year 2021 is. And you can see the red line, our actual projected reserves dropped because we were forced to use some reserves last year to balance our budget because of COVID. And you can see as we go out those years to fiscal year 24 to 25, as we begin to see surpluses in our budget, we'll begin to replenish those reserves until just after fiscal year 25, we estimate the reserves balance will exceed our target range. A little bit on staffing and where we are. Staffing in government is always our largest expense, as I showed on the pie chart earlier. This shows you where our staffing volume is as compared to previous fiscal years. You can see the second column from the right, fiscal year 22 proposed of 189 full-time and part-time total positions. It's really a reduction of about 8 positions from where we are in the current fiscal year 21. But I did want to note that in fiscal year 21, that was also a reduced amount as we began the cutbacks for COVID and began the reduction of permanent and part-time staff. You really look at fiscal year 2020 adopted of 236 staff members compared to where we are now in 2022 at the proposed of 189. And you can see on this chart too, some of the actions we've taken as a result of the reduction in revenues because of COVID. This chart I like because it just gives you a volume sort of interpretation of this. It's really easy to see the color in this chart as you go from left to right across the fiscal years, whether it's blue, green, or yellow. All of those lines are descending, which means that our staffing volume is going down dramatically. And you just get a really good feeling for volume as you look at fiscal years 19 and 20 in that blue chart where we were with total staffing, including temporary staffing, and where we are now. And you can see that those lines in fiscal year 22 as they meet and kind of come off the chart to the right are continuing to descend there. And that will allow us in great part to manage our expenditures. As I said earlier, staffing is our largest expenditure in government services. Okay, really quickly, and I'm not going to focus on this slide, but I show it for demonstration purposes across all of the departments in the general fund. Where we are in comparison to previous fiscal years. Again, if you look at the second column from the right, fiscal year 2022 proposed, and the rightmost column percent change, and we do that as a percent change of what was adopted last year, the third column from the right. And it'll give you a pretty good feeling for where expenses were reduced. In finance, it looks like a large expenditure increase, but there is some accounting principles where non-departmental expenses and payouts of some of our benefits to staff that has been deferred the last couple of years is being reflected here in this budget figure. So that is inflated because of those non-departmental expenses, not because the finance department is taking on greater expenses or hiring more staff. The other thing I did want to point out is fire services here. Kind of, it's the fourth row from the bottom that shows a 3.2% increase. This is a contractual relation that the city of Campbell has with Santa Clara County for fire services. It's an expense that is set by contract. So as we reduce all of our other expenses by making reductions in staffing and expenditure reductions, that's one area. And you can see the expenditure being a very large portion of our expenditures that we have contractual obligations for. Next slide, please. All right, this slide, and I'm not going to belabor this. We've showed this several different ways, but this shows you by department the staffing changes and shows you that 8.49 reduction from last fiscal year to this year. It kind of goes with the previous charts that I showed you. So as we move into each department, we hope to be brief. I appreciate your indulgence in hearing the introduction this evening. This is the order that we're going to go. It is in order the way that's presented in the budget document. So we felt this made most sense. I'm going to introduce the city manager's budget, and then the city clerk, Dusty Christopherson, is going to introduce briefly, highlight the important things in her budget for you. And we're going to move through this list, so on and so forth, through public works. And then we're going to quickly present the capital improvement program. And then we're going to get to the crux of the meeting, which is getting to your comments and your questions. So I appreciate your indulgence and bear with us as we go through this presentation really quickly. But we believe these are things that would be important for the public to understand. All right, I'm introducing the city manager's budget. And city manager's department obviously is important for the administration of the city, but excuse me, there's several things that the city manager's department leads on the city in addition to just administering the city. And in the budget, that's reflected in several different areas. We are working with community development very closely on the development of a general plan. Many of you may have heard of this general plan. It's a project the city has been working on for several years. It's our guiding document that sets everything from our land use patterns to our circulation to dealing with open space and health. But most importantly, the land use piece of that as it relates to housing. We're also looking at projects with community development I will speak on later to develop our housing element, which is our plan to meet our city's fair share of housing in the community. And then we also encompass the IT department. These are the people behind the technology, the Zoom meetings, our public meetings, all of our technologies that we use for publishing our city council packets, presenting our council meetings, operating of our website is encompassed in IT. And one of the things that's important to the public, and we've heard you, is to continue to look for ways to allow for social media to be used in public meetings as this pandemic comes to a close and as we move back to a normal in-person council meetings. This budget anticipates enabling the right equipment and technology to continue to allow the public to participate in a forum much like tonight and still provide feedback without being in person. And then, of course, more importantly, I think to any of those is working on Measure O. This was an important measure that the voters of Campbell voted for a few years ago, and that's our police and library building and renovation project. The city manager's department encompasses that budget item and is leading the overall coordination of that project, which I would have to say is on time and on budget at this point. And we're very proud of that. And we look to the challenges ahead and trying to keep it on time and on budget. And this budget anticipates those expenditures, both the revenues that come in from the taxes collected from your property taxes as a Campbell taxpayer, and the revenues that come in and the expenditures that go out from the bond measures that we're working on. And that is it for the city manager's budget. I'd be glad to introduce Dusty Christopherson, Campbell City Clerk. Dusty?
All right, I'm here. Can you see me? New camera placement. Hello, everybody. My name is Dusty Christopherson. I'm the new city clerk for the city of Campbell. I've been here a week, I think. So I'm just going to start off by explaining a little bit about what the city clerk's office does, because I don't think most people know what we do. So we're a small city clerk's office with just 2 personnel, and we're responsible for providing municipal election services, maintaining the official records of the city, serving as city filing officer, supporting all city council meetings, including all agendas and minutes, with administration of the boards and commissions program, and ensuring all of the legal notice publications meet statutory requirements. And of course, we answer the phones and the emails when all of our citizens call. In this year's budget, the city clerk's department was formally moved out from underneath the city manager's department. We've made a standalone department, which better reflects the organizational structure of the city and of the council's appointed city clerk position. The largest expenditures from the city clerk's office, not including personnel, are the mandatory election expenses, which we manage, the citywide postage expenses, and all of the mandatory legal notice publishing is also done by our office. The work plan items assigned to the city clerk's office are all aligned with Council Priority 8, community participation, and Council Priority 2, financial health, reorganizing the city government into districts and enhancing services provided by the clerk's office will improve residents' access to the city information and improve staff's ability to manage that information on a more cost-efficient manner. The top priority in this year's work plan for the city clerk's office is to continue to work with contracted consultant to update the city council election districts based on the new 2020 census data and in preparation for the 2022 election cycle. So that's just a little snapshot of the city clerk and what we'll be most working on for FY22. And I'll be happy to answer any questions at the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dusty. Next up is our Recreation and Community Service Acting Director, Natasha Bissell. Natasha?
Good evening. So my name is Natasha Bissell. I am the Acting Director. I don't know if I am on the screen, but I will just continue to talk to move things along for you. So the proposed budget presented to Council on Tuesday, the 18th, focused on Council's fiscal stability priority and moving our department more towards cost recovery in the coming years. So some of the key points from the proposed budget was the additional funding for our senior nutrition program to continue the additional meals through the next fiscal year, although we're not certain we'll be needing them as the county transitions back to in-person meals. We'll probably return to the contracted amount that we have with the county. So that was included to continue that support until we could no longer provide it. I did want to clarify that the proposed budget does not have any programs or services within recreation and community services that are being proposed to be eliminated. COVID has presented a variety of challenges for our department, and reopening some program areas is a little bit more challenging due to the county and state guidance that's set out. So we are doing our best to get things open, and having safety at the forefront of our mind for all of our participants is really what our focus is. And through this pandemic, we've learned that while the state may say something, the county might have alternative restrictions. And so it's best for us to be patient prior to pushing things to reopen, and making sure that we have everything correct prior to moving forward with that. Our Ainsley House is looking to resume private pre-reservation tours in mid to late June. And then the Heritage Theater will be hosting the first rental client on June 6th. So we are moving those things forward. A lot of recreation programs are still being offered, mainly outdoors at this moment. We're transitioning to some indoor activities with the new yellow tier. The proposed budget that was presented to council also included a reduction in force of our full-time employees by 2.5. And so it's a step towards more cost recovery for our department, and transitioning our organizational chart to something that eliminates the gaps in our professional growth within our department. So those are the major highlights for our division, and I'm happy to answer questions at the end of this presentation.
Thank you, Natasha. I appreciate that. Next on the list is Will Fuentes, Finance Director. Will?
All right. Well, I want to thank all of the people from the public who've taken the time to attend tonight. We truly do want to hear your input, and you are what makes Campbell great. In our department, we're a bit different in that we typically serve in internal departments. We also serve the council, and we ensure that we are able to pay for everything that we do, either in the budget, but also in the CIP as well. We run and oversee our accounting, our AP, our payroll, but we again also work with all of the departments and also the council to put together the budget and the CIP that you see tonight. We attempt to ensure that our income equals expense, and anytime that our income doesn't equal expenses, we again work with all of the council and all the departments to really get them to be in sync. In the current proposed in the budget, we're working to ensure in the upcoming year that we help Campbell to recover from COVID. that we're able to ensure a fiscal stability, and those two topics will be a key. And then also of interest to the public, although we typically serve internal departments and also the council, we also oversee the business license program as well. And right now, for people to either apply, to pay, to renew, it's either in a person or also through the mail. But in this upcoming year, we've put into the budget a new program, so that companies and people are able to apply, able to pay straight through our site, so that we are able to keep our own people healthy. We're able to keep we're also able to keep the public healthy, but also give them a easier way to both apply and to pay. So I think that those are the key things for our department. But I also will be happy to address any questions when we are all through.
Thank you, Will. All right, so we're going to move on. We're almost there. This will we'll get to the conclusion here really pretty quickly, I think. I'm going to deal with community development. We are in the process of onboarding our new community development director. Rob Eastwood has been hired and begins June 1st. But until he starts, I'm going to present to you the community development department budget. And as I mentioned when I talked about the city manager's office, the community development department, aside from processing permits and applications for construction, they are really the key workers behind the general plan development and our housing development, our housing programs, our below market rate housing programs, our landlord tenant dispute issues. All of those are really handled and managed through community development. And as I mentioned earlier, the city's effort to update our general plan is ongoing. We need to complete that process. And parallel to that, we're beginning our housing element cycle. And for those of you that don't know what that is, the housing element is part of our general plan, is our plan that has to be certified by the state, that shows our long range projections and our long range plan and strategy to provide the required housing for our community that's our fair share and been allocated as our fair share through our regional governance process. And so this year, the Community Development Department will be leading, working with consultants to develop our housing element, to develop those projections over the next year, and then complete the general plan at the same time. As I mentioned, housing and our below market rate housing programs, we use a contract administrator to administer that program. This year, we're looking at our process for doing that, and if there's more efficient ways to achieve our goals or better achieve our goals. in doing that. And really improve housing in the community is the effort. The other area that community development is working on is what are called ADUs. These are these accessory dwelling units, and it is also an important part of our housing program. And we'll be looking at ways to work to improve our ordinances that regulate ADUs and the conversion of structures to ADUs, to simplify that, streamline it, and permit those ADUs that may exist without permits in the community. And so that's it for community development. And again, we will take questions at the end, but we're going to move on to legal services. And I'd be glad to introduce the city's attorney, William Seligman.
Thank you. I am Bill Seligman, and I serve essentially as the chief legal counsel for the city through a contract with my law firm, which is based out of Santa Cruz. Currently, well, my essential role really is to provide support to what everyone else is doing in the city. Of significant note, that includes the Measure O project, of course, and working with community development on such projects as the vehicle camping ordinance, to expand it to allow nonprofit entities throughout the city to allow vehicle camping for homeless individuals in the city. Also to work with community development on the ADU amnesty program that the city manager outlined, and as well as looking into allowing for legalization of short-term rentals within the city. And those are essentially some of the highlights of some of the things that my office will be working on. And with that, I suppose we can move on to the next item on the
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate it. I couldn't get my microphone unmuted there. So thank you for that, Bill. I appreciate it. Next in the presentation is our Police Chief, Gary Berg.
Good evening. I'm very proud to represent the Campbell Police Department as the Chief of Police, and all the great work that our men and women, both sworn and non-sworn, do on a daily basis. We are a full service police department operating for all public safety needs within the Campbell community. And I think what really sets us apart from a lot of other agencies is that connection and that partnership that we've established with our Campbell residents and community over the years. We've really put an emphasis on building those partnerships and fostering an environment of collaboration and respect. And over the last 18 months or so, obviously, those in-person meetings and relationships, building sessions like Coffee with a Cop and other impromptu events have been difficult, but we're always looking for ways to increase those relationships and look for ways of building those partnerships. So obviously there's a lot of dialogue throughout the nation on law enforcement, and I feel very confident in where the Campbell Police Department is and where we're going. Training and transparency continues to be a priority for our department. And we're really at the forefront of new and innovative ideas and trainings, and really feel strongly that our staff has the tools necessary to address the difficult situations that we're encountering on a daily basis. But really that those successes are in large part because of that strong relationship that we've built with our community, and feel very fortunate to work in a department that is able to work in such a collaborative way with our community. So in this upcoming budget cycle, really there are no changes to our service that we're providing. We continue to look for ways to become more efficient, whether that's through different staffing models, or as you'll hear later, CIP requests, looking at things like our technology and bundling those contracts together to not only save money, but to create efficiencies and leverage the technology that's out there to do our job better, provide more transparency through body-worn cameras and other things like that. So we work very hard to provide that high level of service that our community, I know, expects of us. And really we're led by the core principles of policing, and those words are on my wall, which are service, justice, and fundamental fairness, which really guide us in everything we do. So I look forward to the upcoming year, where we'll have more in-person events, and hopefully we have some exciting new programs that hopefully we'll be able to roll out in the coming year with the restrictions being lifted. So I look forward to that and continuing the strong relationship we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Berg. And then our last department's Public Works, Todd Caprerso, our Public Works Director.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here this evening. Hope everyone is doing well. I'm Todd Caprerso, Public Works Director here. And for those of you who don't know, just a quick overview of Public Works. So if you are a Campbell resident and you have used a city facility, it's very likely that it's maintained by the Department of Public Works. So in short, our function is to design, build, and maintain city assets. And that includes from the engineering side of how things are designed, and then constructed. And along the way, the things that we maintain are things such as our road system, our park system, all of the street lights and signals that you see here throughout the city, all of the building facilities, most notably our wonderful community center, and then of course our city fleet, including the police vehicles, as you just heard from the chief. The priorities that we formulate and how we carry out our mission are largely driven by the council priorities. So we support the priorities in particular with regard to helping support Measure O move forward. So you heard the city manager talk about moving the $50 million project forward, which will be a renovation of the existing library building and a construction of a new police building. We're helping to support that effort by moving that forward. We also are supporting the council priority to provide parks and open space. And we do that, again, not only in the maintaining of our parks and open space and trails, but in the renovation and helping make those facilities better places for our residents to use. We are also charged with fiscal stability. So the best example of that would be the maintenance of the roadway system. So the better condition that we maintain our roadway system in, hopefully the lower level of investment it would require in the long haul. So what that really means is that we try to do as much preventive maintenance as we can and hopefully minimize the corrective maintenance that is needed, because doing preventive maintenance is far more cost effective than corrective maintenance. And we're also looking at becoming as efficient as possible, which I know you've heard that from other departments as well, but that is a recurring theme. So as we maintain things like parks and streets and street lights, we're really trying to create an organization where our staff can be as flexible as possible, and all of the sections will help support each other, such that if there is an emergency in any particular area, we can call upon the resources of the entire department to help deal with that. And I want to say that I think we've been very successful about that. And over the last year or so, that has been tested, because we have had to change our priorities and how we maintain and provide services across the city. So we're very happy to be a part of that. With that, if it's okay with the city manager, I'd like to go ahead and roll right into the capital improvement program. So if I could get the slide advanced. So as you will see, when you look at the city's budget, not only in terms of the operating budget, which was discussed earlier, we put together a 5-year capital improvement program. And over the next 5 years, you will see that the city is looking to invest over $87 million in the community, in community assets. I will say that is large. The most significant portion of that is the $50 million that comes from Measure O, which will address both the library and the police department projects. But there's also some new projects in there. And then there's what we call carryover projects, which are projects that have been started in a previous fiscal year that we continue to work on. And I think there's a couple of really good examples of that I think the community would want to be just make sure that I want to make sure that you're aware of. So in addition to the significant projects of Measure O, again, we also do the maintenance of our roadway system. And every year we are providing a project of approximately $2 million worth of roadway renovation and improvement. We will sometimes fluctuate between working on the arterials. So the arterials are going to be our busier streets like Winchester, Bascom, Hamilton. Over the last couple of years, you will have noticed that we did a major repaving project on Winchester from city limit on the north to the city limit on the south. However, this year we will be moving back into the local and residential streets as you've seen us do in the past. So you will very likely see some overcoating, what we call slurry seal, with some rubberized chip on top of that. And so that will be our project for not only this coming summer, but for next summer as well. So for the next couple of years, you'll see us focusing our efforts on the local streets. And then from a park and open space perspective, you may be aware that we are working on the renovation of a play lot out at John D. Morgan Park on the Bud side. So we have taken down the pre-existing play lot out there, and we are constructing what is called an all-inclusive play area. So it not only focuses on accessibility for all, but it really focuses on the needs and provides playability for children and families of all abilities. So it's going to be a little bit of a change for how we've been providing our recreational elements in some of our parks, but that one is under construction, and that should be completed by the end of the summer. Shortly thereafter, after John D. Morgan reopens, we'll be doing a similar renovation out at Campbell Park. So the play area out at Campbell will be renovated and replaced, as will the restroom, and we'll be doing some other improvements out there along the periphery as well. So with that in mind, that is really kind of the highlights of both Public Works operationally and the highlights of the capital improvement program. And I too will be available to help answer questions along the way. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. We appreciate that. And thank you to staff and the council for all the hard work to get us to this point. But now we're at the point to hear from you. That's really why we're here. It probably excruciating to sit through a presentation, but hopefully the public found that informative and helped you with maybe some questions or with your comments. But we're going to look at the public, and for the time being, we have several attendees on this call. And so to manage that time, we're going to start with a 3-minute time limit for each of you. And then pending time, if we have more time, we'd be glad to entertain more comments. So I'm going to ask the city clerk if you could introduce our public speakers, and if Cecil, if you can help mute and unmute them, that would be helpful.
All right, so we have 2 speakers that have signed up to speak. The first is Jean Lund, I believe is with us online. Okay, Jean, can you unmute yourself? We see you.
Okay, I can't see myself, but good.
Well, we see your name. We can hear you. You've got the floor.
Thank you. I'm Jean Lund. I've lived in Campbell for over 22 years. And first, before I start, I want to thank everyone on the council. And I want to thank the entire city staff for their hard work this year in this very, very trying year. This has been a rough one for all of us. And these are very difficult decisions, and we all know that. But I also tonight want to shine a light on why I believe that residents enjoy living here and why neighbors from nearby cities choose to come here and to participate and use our wonderful recreational and cultural assets. In fact, our current city council can personally take credit for many of these. Paul with the city parks, Liz with our historic museum and Ainsley House, and for her years of service to this community as the city clerk and now as a council member. Susan, who is now in her 2nd term and who is a landscape expert and cares about our environment. and our newest member, Sergio, a very thoughtful young man who is an excellent writer and very interested in history and including historical figures and places. By the way, I also want to thank Ken Johnson, our chamber president, and his wonderful staff, because they put on those beautiful, very, very popular yearly events that bring thousands into our town to enjoy and spend money year after year. So that said, I know we all have to fund all the city services, public works, the police department headed by Gary, blah, 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 all these other important functions that a city has to do. But my point tonight is we cannot forget that one of the top reasons people love Campbell with its great small town atmosphere are the recreational and cultural amenities that we have here. So in my opinion, and I think this is the opinion of many, many others, we need a way to find a way to keep the funding for one, our historical heritage theater that brings entertainment and money to our downtown restaurants and shops. And I'm sure most of you realize it takes months and years to build or plan shows, and rental customers will simply leave and they'll never come back if we don't keep this wonderful theater going. Number two is our historic museum programs that we do for local schools. Very, very important. And three, our recreation and community center programs, which include the pool, the track, et cetera, all of those things, which again, are not just enjoyed by our residents, but bring thousands of our neighbors into our city to enjoy and also to spend money. So please, my wish in conclusion is that you do not cut these important assets out of the budget that make our city so desirable. In fact, I think most people would agree. I mean, I really believe we need these things more than ever right now. And thank you for the opportunity to speak. And I look forward to hearing what others have to think too.
Thank you, Jean. We appreciate your participation and your thoughts on the process, certainly. Madam City Clerk, do we have another speaker?
We do. Forrest Williams has signed up to speak.
Okay.
I don't see his name connected right now, but we do have one hand raised by a Lillian Shaban.
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Lillian. We hear you and we see your name on the screen, so you've got the floor.
Oh, I just wanted to say, please, please keep the Heritage Theater open, because I've been an usher since 2004 when they first opened, and I'm really sorry that it hasn't been open lately, and I just want to see it coming back. I know a lot of people who are dying to go back to see nice things and a community that helps, very important to the community. And also the schools, they were having their dances there, they were having graduation there. And, you know, I feel so sorry for all those people not be able to use it right now. So please, please reopen the theater that I can usher again. Thank you.
Thank you, Lillian. We appreciate your comments. All right, Madam City Clerk, next speaker, please.
Yes, we have a hand raised by Ellen Railton.
All right,
Yes.
Ellen, we can hear you. You've got the floor.
I thank you. Yes, I really appreciate both Jean and Lillian. I volunteer for both the museums and the Heritage Theater. And I have to say, being able to volunteer as a resident of Campbell has been very fulfilling. The museums give so much back to who we are as a community. And the Heritage Theater and the whole community center has been just such an asset that I really think that they need to be funded going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments, Ellen. We appreciate your participation. Next speaker.
Chris Bracher.
Hi, Chris. I think we can hear you here.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we've got you. Thanks for joining us, Chris.
So, well, I'm part of the Heritage Theater cheerleader group that's here tonight. You know, and I'm here speaking on behalf of actually several different people. So not just myself as a member of the Friends of the Heritage Theater Board, but also my mother, Vivian Bracker, who was one of the original members and one of the biggest fundraisers to get the theater, to raise money to get the theater restored and opened initially. So I think going forward, if we want to announce to the Campbell community in the biggest possible way, in one of the most visible ways, and not just the Campbell community, but even the Greater Valley, that things have gone back to normal after this just kind of horrific year that we've had. Opening the theater, or excuse me, keeping it open would be one of the best ways to do it. I know that we've already got someone booked for the fall in October, so it would be great not to disappoint them. And it would be great to bring even more acts back as they become available, you know, to really rejuvenate our community. So, and I'm saying this as not just, you know, I'm saying this as a third generation resident of Campbell. I'm saying this as a past member of the General Plan Advisory Committee, where we received a ton of community input specifically about things like this. Again, I'm with everybody else that's commented so far that we really need to do whatever we can to keep the theater open. I realize it seems like not such a practical thing, but for everybody's health and well-being, and I think the positive outlook of Campbell and you know, all of our visitors, city visitors, it's a really crucial thing to maintain. So thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate your comments and participation as well. All right, do we have another speaker, Madam City Clerk?
No, Mr. Mayor, we don't. That's the last hand raised.
Okay. Wow, we have a lot of attendees and we only heard from a few of you. So we'll give you a moment to utilize technology if you'd like to speak. If you can use the raise hand feature, that would help us identify you. We're going to pause for a moment, give you an opportunity to indicate your interest. I see a few people starting to raise their hands here.
Yes,
If
our
you would
first one is Talar Gutierrez.
Thank you, Pilar. Can you unmute yourself?
Yes. Okay. Hi, can you hear me?
We've got you. Thank you very much for joining us. You've got the floor.
Okay. Hi, how are you? So I just want to ask, please, to keep the Heritage Theater open. You know, our community needs it, not only for our schools, for youth, for the arts. My daughter has been dancing there since she was 7. Some of her best memories are from those performances. I'm also a teacher that has brought students there year after year. You know, some of these students will have never had a chance to see any performance in their whole life because they come from underperforming schools. You know, they're free and reduced lunch, and you know, we can give them that opportunity. So please, please, if it's possible, keep it open.
Thank you, Pilar. We appreciate your comments.
I don't have any other hands, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Manager, I
Mr.
believe.
Manager. No, oh, I'm sorry. One just came in. Anita Lee.
Okay. Anita, we see you in the room here. If you can unmute yourself, you have the floor.
Hello, can you hear me now?
We can, Anita. Thank you for joining us.
Yes. I live in Campbell for 48 years, and I'm really proud we have the Heritage Theater, because that is so crucial and so good for the community to have a place for the art and culture, and it draws the other people to come to Campbell. I met some co-workers, they don't live in Campbell, but when I volunteered there, I met them, and they talk so much about the theater, and they are the season ticket holder. And so I really appreciate, keeping it open. I have been volunteered there I retired for 11 years. I volunteered there almost 10 years. And I like that. I like to put in the volunteer work, but I like Campbell to have some place for the public and the community to share.
Thank you, Anita. We appreciate your comments. Thank you for joining us. We value your participation. There's a lot of comments on the theater this evening, and it looks like we still have time here. We really allocated till 8 p.m. tonight. So if any more members that are on this call, I still see several more. Give you an opportunity to indicate your interest in speaking. I did want to clarify, while we'll give members just a moment here, since we had several speakers on the theater, this budget proposal that's before presented to the council does not eliminate the theater, does not call for closing the theater. We're very much interested in how we manage our expenses when we are closed or forced to close during health crisis. And we're looking at ways to resume in a most efficient manner, but we definitely appreciate your support. And we will make sure that all of the comments we receive this evening, either support or concern, is expressed to the council when they discuss the budget next on June 1st. So with that, I'm going to give one more call out to anyone from the public that wants to speak. Natasha, did you want to add to something?
Brian, did you just want me to clarify about the item that the mayor referenced from the side memo in regards to the amendment to the contract? So there was
sure.
some
We have a moment, and since there were so many speakers on that item, it might be helpful to clarify that. So thank you.
Sure. So there was a side memo presented to council with the proposed budget in regards to the current agreement with our vendor who operates the theater. And so it was at the purview of the council to push that discussion to June 1st. So you will see this agendized on the June 1st meeting to address an amendment to the contract, or to the existing contract with our management group to like, as Brian said, better manage our expenditures in the event of a future crisis. And so it kind of addresses those issues and concerns that council had during this pandemic. And that would be what the discussion is about.
Appreciate the clarity, Natasha. That may help with some of those that had comments. Madam Clerk, do we have any more people wishing to speak?
Chris Brager has a hand raised.
Okay, Chris, we heard from you already. Do you want to speak again? We'd be glad to hear you if you have more to say.
I actually just want to make a quick comment about the Measure O project and express that as much as I'm in favor of our library getting rebuilt, and I can't wait to see that new facility, we need to pay as much attention and place as much importance and effort on the police station project as well, and keeping it moving along in a timely manner as much as the library. So Gary and all of his predecessors have just done a fantastic job for the Campbell community. And I personally want to see them equipped as well as possible. So we just need to stay on track with the new police station and facility, as well as the library.
Thank you, Chris. We appreciate the comments. And as I said, we do have time, so I'd be more than happy to entertain additional comments from any of the members of the public or questions. If you're interested, if you could use the raise hand function in your computer, that would be helpful. All right. So I don't see anything on my screen. Madam City Clerk, do you have any public speakers that still want to speak that you note?
No, I do not.
All right. So going once, going twice on that. Is there any of the staff members that wanted to add any clarity to the questions or comments that were provided? All right then. Silence is so reassuring. I would like to think everyone's thrilled with the presentation and with the budget. I would encourage you to go to our website. There is a news flash there. You could click on that and get to the digital budget book, play with it. You could certainly during the year, as you are interested in particular topics, refine your dashboard and see what you want of the budget without having to scroll through hundreds of pages. And give us your input on that. This is the first year we have the digital budget book. We'd love to hear from you on things that worked well with it and things that you found difficult to navigate as we refine that product in the future. And then as a bit of closure here, I do want to encourage you to attend in June 1st. As was shown earlier in the slides, we will be coming to the council to introduce the draft budget and presenting all the comments we received this evening to the council on June 1st. If you're interested, we would love to have you at that meeting. And as was said by our acting community and recreation director, that we will also be considering an amendment for our service provider for the theater, simply an amendment of those terms on providing those services. And then lastly, on June 15th, our council will be considering adopting the budget. That would be your next opportunity, in addition to those I mentioned, to provide one more final opportunity for input before the council adopts it. With that, one more chance for anyone from the public that has questions. We do have more time allocated here if you're interested. This meeting was really here for you. So even silly questions, we're more than happy to take this evening. All right, going once, going twice. All right, I think that is it. And getting no interest from the public, I can't encourage any more. I think unless there's additional comments from staff, we're going to adjourn this public workshop. And hearing and seeing none, I am going to adjourn this. Thank you, all you members of the public, for attending, and we definitely appreciate your comments and look forward to seeing you at future meetings. Thank you and good evening.